Let me ask you something. How long have you been studying English? Think about it. A year? 3 years? Five or more? And how much of that time have you spent studying consistently? Watching videos, doing exercises, reviewing grammar, building vocabulary. Now, here's the harder question. Are you at the level you expected to be by now? If the answer is no, if you've put in the hours and the results don't match the effort, I want you to know something very important. The problem here is almost certainly not how much you've been studying, it's what you're studying and how you're studying. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly why more hours stop working at intermediate and what you need to change to start moving and making progress again. Ready? So let's get into it. Here's what the intermediate plateau actually looks like from the inside. You understand a lot of English, you can read articles in English, you can follow conversations in English, you can communicate well enough to get through most situations. In other words, your English works, it's operational. And yet, something is missing. You reach for a word, it's not there. You understand everything in the film, or almost everything, but couldn't reproduce it naturally if you had to. You know the grammar rule, but you still make the same mistake in conversation. You feel like you're moving through mud. So, what do most learners do at this point? They study more videos, more grammar exercises, more vocabulary lists, more hours. Because if studying got them this far, more studying should get them further, right? It's just logical. But it doesn't work that way. And there's a very specific reason why. At beginner level, almost any study helps because you're building from zero. Every new word, every grammar point, every piece of input moves you forward. It's easier to see progress. The method almost doesn't matter at this point because everything is brand new to you. But at intermediate level, the rules change completely. You're no longer building from nothing. You have a foundation. And what that foundation needs now is not more bricks. It needs to be tested, stressed, used. Intermediate is where passive study stops being enough, and most learners never get that idea. Before I break down exactly what's going wrong, a quick word. One of the biggest problems intermediate learners face is the lack of structure to study. And without structure, most learners default to repeating what they already know, which feels productive, but it isn't. The B2 Edge app was built to solve exactly this. It gives you a clear sequence roadmap from B1 to B2, so you're always working on the right thing at the right time, with an AI coach to practice what you've learned. No guessing, no scattered content, no prompt engineering by yourself for hours. Just a clear path forward. Link is in the description. Now, let's talk about what's actually going wrong with your study hours. There are two problems happening simultaneously when intermediate learners hit this wall. The first is content, the second is method. Let's take them one at a time. Problem one, you're studying the wrong things for your level. Here's something I see constantly. An intermediate learner, solid B1, maybe pushing B2, still spending the majority of their study time on beginner and lower intermediate material. Grammar exercises they already know. Vocabulary lists full of words they've seen 100 times. Content that feels comfortable, because it is comfortable. And comfortable at intermediate is a warning sign. If your study material isn't challenging you, if you're not occasionally confused, occasionally reaching for something just outside your grasp, you're not in the zone where growth happens. You're in the zone where you maintain what you already have. Now, here's the harder issue. A lot of learners today are relying entirely on free content available online. And look, I understand the appeal. There is an enormous amount of free English content out there. Videos, podcasts, courses, apps. But here's the problem with free content. It's scattered. It's not sequenced. One video teaches you business vocabulary. The next one teaches pronunciation basics. The next one is about phrasal verbs for beginners. There's no roadmap. There's no, you should learn this, then that, and then that. And this is the part most learners don't think about. You often have no way of knowing whether the person giving you that free content actually knows what they're talking about. I learned English by myself. I did it without a course, without a teacher, without going abroad. And I am proud of that. But I'll also be honest with you. It took me significantly longer than it needed to because I didn't have structure. I didn't have a roadmap. I was figuring everything out by myself as I went. If I had had access to a clear, well designed learning path from B1 to B2, built by someone who understood exactly what needed to be learned and in what order, I would have gotten there faster, much faster. But even the best content won't save you if the second problem is still in place. And this one is even more fundamental. Listen closely. Problem 2. You're studying too passively. And passive study at intermediate level is almost useless. Let me explain what I mean by passive. Passive study is when you consume information without being forced to produce it. You watch a video about phrasal verbs, you recognize them, you understand them, you feel like you've learned them. You do a grammar exercise with multiple choice answers, you tick the right boxes, you feel like you have reinforced the rule. But recognition is not the same as retrieval and production. And retrieval is what you need in a real conversation. Think about what actually happens when you speak. You don't get multiple choice options. You don't get to recognize the right answer from a list. Your brain has to generate the word, the phrase, the structure from nothing, under pressure, in real time. And if you've only ever studied passively, that generation muscle is weak, dangerously weak. Here's the analogy I always use with students. Imagine someone who wants to run a marathon. They watch every documentary about marathon running they can find. They read every book. They study training plans, nutrition guides, race day strategies. They know everything about marathon running. And then, on race day, they can't finish even the first kilometer because watching and reading about running is not running. And studying English passively is not speaking, writing, and producing English actively. Active study means being forced to produce, to speak, to write, to retrieve vocabulary from memory, not from a list in front of you, to use grammar in real sentences, not identify it in someone else's. And the more uncomfortable that production feels, the more it's working. So those are the two problems. Wrong content, not challenging enough, not sequenced, not trustworthy, and wrong method, passive consumption instead of active production. The fix is not complicated, but it does require you to change two habits simultaneously. Fix 1. Study content that is slightly above your current level. Not so far above that you understand nothing. That's demoralizing, but comfortably uncomfortable. Material where you understand the majority, but are being stretched, where you encounter words and structures you're not fully confident with yet. And critically, make sure that content comes from a source you trust. Someone with real teaching credentials, real experience, and a real understanding of what intermediate learners need. Not just someone with a high subscriber count, so be very careful with that. Fix 2. Convert everything you study into active production. Every vocabulary item you learn, use it in a sentence, out loud, write it down, not just in your head, out loud or on paper. Every grammar point you review, produce 3 example sentences from your own life, not from a textbook, from your own experience. Write them down. The moment you add active production to your study, the moment you stop being a passive receiver of information and start being a producer of language, your progress will accelerate in a way that surprises you. I've seen this happen dozens of times. A student comes to me frustrated, convinced they're not a good English learner, convinced something is wrong with them. We look at their study habits, and then we shift from passive to active. Within weeks, not months, weeks, that ceiling starts moving. Nothing was wrong with them in the first place. The method they were employing was wrong. So here's a quick recap. If more study hours are not moving you forward, the answer is almost never study more. It's study smarter, which means two very specific things. First, study the right content that is properly sequenced for your level and that comes from someone who truly knows how to get you from where you are to where you want to be. That's the first thing you got to do. The second thing, make everything active. Stop being a passive receiver. Start being a producer of language, because the English you can use under pressure is the English you've been forced to produce, not the English you've only ever recognized. And you don't have to figure this out alone. You don't have to spend years doing what I did, piecing it together from scattered sources, wasting time on content that wasn't really right for your level in the first place, hoping that more hours would eventually add up to a breakthrough. They won't, not without the right structure in place. That's exactly why I built the B2 Edge app. You get a clear, sequenced roadmap from B1 to B2, lessons that build on each other, vocabulary and grammar in logical order, and an AI speaking coach that converts everything you're learning in the app into active production. No scattered content, no guessing what to study next, just a clear path you follow every single day. And also the tools to walk that path. Link in the description, do check it out. And here's what I want you to do right now. Look at what you studied this past week. Ask yourself honestly, was it challenging enough? And did you produce anything with that information, or did you just consume that information? Those two questions will tell you everything you need to know about why you are where you are and what needs to change today. I'm Thiago. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I'll talk to you in the next video. By the way, if you want to keep learning more, I highly recommend you check out this lesson next.